300,000 years ago, Earth was in the midst of an ice age. A frigid climate covered much of Europe and Asia. Ice and snow extended from the north, turning plains into frozen tundra, habitats for massive animals such as woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant deer, and bison. Amidst this environment existed an ancient human species, the Neanderthals. They were not Homo sapiens, nor were they our direct ancestors. Neanderthals were a separate branch within the Homo genus, adapted to survive in extreme conditions for hundreds of thousands of years. The Neanderthal body had distinct structural differences. They were shorter than modern humans, but had thicker muscles and denser bones. Their large skulls, low foreheads, prominent brow ridges, and wide noses were all adaptations for conserving heat and minimizing thermal loss in cold climates. Their large skulls also housed brains comparable in size, and sometimes even larger than the modern human average. They primarily lived in Europe, from the grasslands of Spain to the Caucasus Mountains and parts of Central Asia. The climate in these regions fluctuated dramatically during the Ice Age, making food sources unstable. To survive, Neanderthals relied entirely on hunting and gathering, with no evidence of farming or domestication. One of their defining traits was their ability to make tools. Neanderthals used the levallois technique to shape stones with precision. They crafted hand axes, cutting knives, small blades, scrapers, butchering tools, and especially sharp-tipped spears, their main weapons for hunting large animals. These tools were made from flint, bone, and wood, and often show signs of long-term use and repeated sharpening. Neanderthals employed specific hunting strategies. They did not hunt alone, but worked in groups. Each group ranged from a few to over a dozen individuals, with organized roles and coordination. They used natural landscapes, cliffs, narrow gorges, or icy rivers to trap and corner prey. Archaeological evidence shows patterns of ambushes, coordinated chases, and collective attacks. Their primary targets were large animals: mammoths, woolly rhinos, bison, wild horses, giant deer, and occasionally cave bears. Hunts could last several days and required tracking, analyzing movement patterns, and selecting the right moment to strike. Beyond tool use, Neanderthals controlled fire. They knew how to start fires, maintain embers, and use fire for warmth, cooking, and deterring predators. In their cave dwellings, layers of ash and charred wood fragments have been found, confirming habitual fire use. Overall, Neanderthals were professional hunters, surviving in harsh environments by combining robust physical traits, advanced tool-making skills, and group-based hunting tactics. Their existence spanned over 300,000 years, demonstrating a high level of adaptability and the ability to develop technical culture within a volatile and freezing world. The next section will analyze in detail the weapons, tools, and animals they hunted to sustain their survival. Part 2. The Hunters of the Frozen Tundra. Neanderthals did not farm, did not raise livestock, and did not store food long-term. Their entire nutritional intake came from hunting and gathering. In a freezing environment, plant resources were extremely scarce. Food primarily came from animals. Therefore, hunting was a vital activity for survival. Their weapons were developed over tens of thousands of years. The main tools included long wooden spears with flint tips, sharpened to pierce the thick skin and muscles of large animals. The length allowed them to keep a safe distance when facing dangerous prey. Teardrop-shaped hand axes, used for chopping bones, cutting meat, gutting animals, or self-defense. These were multifunctional tools. Levallois tools, products of advanced stone-shaping techniques. From a stone core, they produced flakes with predetermined shapes and sizes, used as blades, spear points, or scrapers. These stone tools were sharp, light, and easily replaceable. In addition, they used clubs, bone knives, and possibly animal sinew as cords for tying, pulling, or setting traps. Their prey were not small, easy-to-catch animals. Neanderthals targeted large animals with high energy returns. Woolly mammoths, over 3 meters tall, weighing between 6 to 10 tons. The meat, fat, and bone marrow from one kill could feed an entire group for many days. Woolly rhinoceroses, thick-skinned with powerful charges and horns capable of causing fatal injuries. Megaloceros, giant deer, nearly 2.1 meters tall, with antlers spreading up to 3.6 meters, typically moving in herds. Cave bears, carnivores that shared cave habitats with Neanderthals. Territorial conflict was possible. Cave lions, bison, wild horses, all high-risk but highly rewarding food sources. Every hunt required tight organization. Neanderthals operated in small groups, typically between 5 to 15 individuals. They divided roles clearly: trackers and animal scouts, ambushers positioned according to wind direction, main attackers armed with spears, flankers or blockers to cut off escape routes. They exploited the terrain: narrow gorges to funnel animals, icy rivers to create slippery traps, or bogs to slow prey movement. Archaeological evidence suggests they drove animals off cliffs or chased them into dead-end ravines. Hunting large prey carried a high risk of injury or death. A single strike from a mammoth or rhinoceros could break bones and kill instantly. If an animal turned and counterattacked instead of fleeing, the situation could reverse rapidly. A wounded hunter might never fully recover due to primitive medical conditions. Despite the danger, hunting large animals was a logical energy strategy. A mammoth could yield hundreds of kilograms of meat, marrow, hide, bones, and fat, resources used for eating, tool-making, clothing, and shelter. No part of the animal was wasted. Every successful hunt was a life-sustaining victory, but failure could lead to extended hunger, loss of key members, and potential collapse of the group. Neanderthals were not aimless wanderers chasing prey randomly. They were professional hunters, understanding animals, terrain, and their own physical limits. The cold environment allowed no room for error. Hunting skills were not optional. They were essential for survival. Part 3. Tracking and ambushing prey. Neanderthals had no modern technology. They lacked binoculars, long-range weapons, or tracking devices. However, they possessed the ability to observe, analyze, and assess their environment through intuition and practical experience. They tracked prey by reading direct signs in the terrain, footprints to determine direction and movement speed, fresh or cold droppings to estimate the time gap between the animals and the humans, scratches on tree trunks, trampled grass, or disturbed soil left by large herbivores. They also relied on secondary environmental cues, such as wind and sound. A headwind allowed them to approach prey undetected. They watched for unusual behavior in birds or small animals to infer the presence of large predators or herds. Tracking alone was not the end goal. Neanderthals used tracking to set up ambushes. They employed strategic techniques based on terrain, using narrow valleys or gorges to trap herds into dead ends, driving animals toward cliffs or marshes where movement was limited, manipulating herds with branches, stones, or fake noises to steer them toward trap zones, selecting advantageous hiding positions on ridges, behind rocks, or in dense shrubs where they could launch spears from close range with high accuracy. Archaeological evidence from sites like La Côte de Saint-Brelade, Jersey, shows traces of mammoths driven off cliffs. Other locations contain piles of large animal bones alongside stone tools, indicating organized group hunts and post-kill distribution. The hunting group structure remained consistent. Small teams of 5 to 15 individuals. Adults handled ambush and close-range attacks. Elders were responsible for scouting, guiding, tracking, and tending the fire. Children did not participate directly, but observed the hunts to learn essential skills. Understanding animal behavior was crucial. They knew seasonal migration patterns for different species. They identified times of reproduction, molting, or seasonal weakness when herds were most vulnerable. They memorized routes, water sources, and sheltering spots to plan efficient ambushes. These skills were not written down. They were passed orally and through demonstration, a nonverbal knowledge system refined over hundreds of thousands of years of interaction with the natural world. Neanderthals did not hunt randomly. They planned ahead, tracked with intent, leveraged terrain, coordinated with others, and chose the optimal time to strike. Every hunt involved a calculated risk-reward evaluation, demanding intellect, physical ability, and group discipline. Failure in hunting could mean hunger, injury, or death. A successful ambush provided not only meat, but fat, bones, hides, and social status within the group. Thus, a successful ambush was not only a survival tactic, it was a marker of collective intelligence. Neanderthals were not merely physically strong. They were strategists of the natural world, utilizing every available data point from their surroundings to gain control over prey. This demonstrates their logical reasoning, long-term observation, and ability to act in synchrony, core components in the evolution of human intelligence. Part 4. A day in the life of a Neanderthal hunter. A Neanderthal hunting day began before sunrise. Temperatures were low and cold air covered the landscape. Fires were rekindled using embers left from the night before. The hunting group prepared their tools. Long wooden spears were sharpened, stone blades were firmly secured to handles, and spear tips were checked carefully to ensure they were not cracked. Breakfast usually consisted of leftover dried meat or bone marrow preserved in animal hide. Movement started as soon as there was enough light. They followed old tracks left by prey. The goal was to reach areas with water, melting snow valleys, or places where birds and small animals gathered, indicators of large animal presence. The group moved silently, maintaining distance and formation to avoid unnecessary noise. If suitable prey was spotted, the group immediately formed an ambush plan. Some members were assigned to encircle the target, while others found optimal positions to throw spears. Once the animal was brought down, the entire group moved in to process the carcass. Experienced members handled the butchering. One group skinned the animal, extracted sinew, and harvested fat. Another group broke bones, retrieved marrow, and sorted internal organs. Every part of the animal was used. Hides were turned into cloaks or bedding. Bones were used to make tools, needles, or tent frames. Animal sinew became rope. Fat was burned for light or used to preserve food. Nothing was wasted. Food was brought back to the shelter. Some was cooked immediately over the fire. The rest was dried or stored. Distribution followed simple social rules. Those who participated directly in the hunt were prioritized. The elderly and young received portions according to their roles and needs. Individuals with valuable skills, tool-making, firekeeping, or teaching were also valued. In the evening, the group returned to their shelter, either a cave or a temporary tent built from animal hides, branches, and large bones. They sat around the fire for warmth and meals. Without complex spoken language, they communicated through gestures, simple sounds, and facial expressions. Information about the hunt, skills, lessons, and dangers was passed down through repetitive actions and demonstrations. Nighttime temperatures dropped sharply. The group slept close to the fire. Animal hides were used as bedding and covers. Firekeeping was done in shifts throughout the night to ward off predators and keep the elderly and children warm. Their entire way of life revolved around hunting, preparation, tracking, ambush, processing, distribution, and energy conservation. They lived by the rhythm of their prey, the weather, and the movements of animal herds. There were no luxuries, no long-term storage, and no concept of personal property. Every individual had a functional role. There was no independent living. Survival depended on teamwork and division of labor. Children learned by observing and copying adults. Elders served as the collective memory of the group, holding knowledge about hunting, shelters, and how to adapt to climate challenges. Their resources extended beyond food. Sinew became binding material. Bones became tools. Fat became light. Hides became shelter and clothing. Bone marrow was a vital energy source. Each part was processed with precision and efficiency. Neanderthals had no permanent homes, but they maintained a mobile organizational system, adapting to changing environments. Their lives were a constant cycle focused on sustaining energy, protecting the group, and passing on survival knowledge. Survival depended on efficient resource management and functioning as a unified group. Part 5. Lessons from the past. Neanderthal survival. Neanderthals went extinct around 40,000 years ago. However, archaeological evidence shows that their survival system was highly practical and sustainable. Their skills, methods, and behavioral models reflect an exceptional ability to adapt to harsh environments, an ecosystem built on functional efficiency, independent of technology. Neanderthal hunting relied on 3 factors: analysis, strategy, and group cooperation. Analysis: they observed animal behavior, terrain conditions, wind direction, and tracks to make optimal attack decisions. Strategy: they used the landscape to funnel prey, set ambush points, and execute plans with tactical precision. Cooperation: small hunting groups assigned clear roles. No individual acted alone. The group moved and responded as a unified system. Many of their skills are now taught in modern survival, military, and field ecology courses. Tracking animal signs, orienting using wind, sunlight, and terrain, analyzing migration patterns and seasonal behaviors, using natural resources to maintain body heat and nutritional intake. Neanderthals maintained survival without stable supply chains, permanent infrastructure, or long-term food storage. They built temporary shelters using hides, bones, and wood. Fire was preserved through techniques like storing embers in bark, clay, or insulating materials. Food was distributed based on role and need, not personal accumulation. Their basic social organization is evident in sharing meat according to effort and age, taking turns maintaining fire and shelter security, communicating through gesture systems, repeated actions, and behavior. Not complex language, but sufficient to convey hunting and survival information. Genetic and archaeological data do not suggest that Neanderthals were intellectually inferior to Homo sapiens. They had large brains, tool-making skills, fire mastery, and deep ecological knowledge. Their extinction was not due to stupidity, but rather a combination of factors: climate shifts, competition for resources, and the spread of Homo sapiens with more flexible social systems. The Neanderthal survival model proves that a human group can endure for hundreds of thousands of years without agriculture, technology, or written culture. They relied entirely on biological adaptation, efficient group organization, and sustainable resource use. In modern scenarios, energy crises, natural disasters, or infrastructure collapse, skills like hunting, shelter building, fire maintenance, resource sharing, and environmental awareness may become essential again. These are precisely the skill sets that Neanderthals sustained for over 300,000 years. They did not need cities. They did not need electricity. They did not need a global food distribution network. Yet they survived in year-round snow, among large predators, and under extreme climate variability. Neanderthals represent a model of existence rooted entirely in nature, without technological dependence, industrial waste, or large-scale ecosystem destruction. Every action, from hunting to tool-making, had a clear purpose and was restrained by practical limits. If modern humans were to lose their technological systems, Neanderthal-style basic survival skills would be the only key to recovery. Not strength, not wealth, but practical knowledge from the past. Neanderthals left no books, but they left behind a living system built on experience, instinct, and group coordination, enough to endure through any transformation in the natural world.